And when I think about people being blown about with every wind of doctrine, I think of the internet. I think of all the crazy wind of doctrine that is out there on the internet. And I don't go looking for it. You don't really have to go looking for it. If you just turn on your computer and go to some, whether it's Facebook or some other social media, or just Google something about the Bible, you'll find all kinds of these crazy ideas on the internet. And you need to make sure that you don't get distracted by all of this nonsense, because this stuff will distract you from knowing God's plan for your life. In the Hebrews, he said it's time for some of you ought to be teachers by now. Some of you maybe ought to be apostles or prophets or evangelists or pastors by now. And most of you, I don't know you well enough to know, who or what or why, any details. But in a crowd this size, I think it's safe to say that some of you might be distracted from the will of God because your mind is focused on some unhealthy ideas, and you might be harboring some unhealthy attitudes that you need to grow up. And as we grow up, in the physical sense, biological sense, as we grow up from childhood to adulthood, there are certain things that we shed. Little girls usually quit playing with toy dolls at a certain point. Little boys eventually stop playing with little toy cars at some point. And like Paul said, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away foolish things. And so the same thing is true spiritually, that we grow up and we shed certain things, whether it's distractions, obsessions, and so forth, things like that. And you might be saying, okay, Daniel, you're saying that hitbagru, that we need to make a decision to grow up, spiritually speaking, to spiritually mature. How do we do that? How do we grow up? Unlike biological maturity, spiritual maturity doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen on its own. We have to make a decision to do it. And Paul tells us how to do it in a passage that you're all familiar with, I think, and that's in Romans chapter 12. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. First of all, present your body a living sacrifice. Our body, okay, if I have presented my body as a living sacrifice, that means these eyes are not going to look at things the Lord doesn't want me to look at. My ears are not going to listen to things the Lord doesn't want me to listen to. My hands aren't going to handle things the Lord doesn't want me to handle. My tongue isn't going to taste things the Lord doesn't want me to taste. If my feet belong to the Lord, they're not going to carry me to places He does not want me to go. Presenting our body as a living sacrifice means saying, Lord, my body belongs to you. So help me to understand what things you want me to do with this body. What do you want me to use my five senses for? What do you want me to use my limbs and my digits for? What do you want me to do with my body? What do you want me to not do with this body? Present your body as a living sacrifice. And he says, don't be conformed to this world. And this, I believe, is probably more important part. I don't believe it's that easy to present your body as a living sacrifice until you actually do this as well, not be conformed to the world. Now, Yeshua said, my kingdom is not of this world. Don't be conformed to this world, because his kingdom is not of this world. And I think too many believers seem to be focused too much on things that are happening in this world. They go on the internet, they see all this stuff, and if you focus on what is happening in this world, you're going to start getting conformed to this world. And by that, I don't mean that we should just never look at the news or anything like that, just put our head in the sand and pretend like there's no problems in the world. What I mean is, don't be focused so much on what is happening in this world, this age, to the extent where it causes you to get in a panic and become paranoid and fearful about things. Remember what the Lord said. This is out of Luke 21:25 through 28. He said, he's talking about things that are going to be happening before his return. He says, "And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory." So he talks about all these scary things, and he goes into even more detail in Matthew 24. But after he talks about all these scary things that are going to happen, he says, and listen closely to his words here, because these are not my words, these are his words. He says, "And when these things begin to come to pass," then get in a panic and become paranoid? No, he says, "When these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh."